boys and girls. So I'm just going to go over a few things before we get into our read aloud. Just some reminders. So you have been working on your compare and contrast assignment now. However, I'm seeing that not everybody is following the directions. You guys need to make sure that you are clicking on every link in the hyperdoc and that you are following the hyperdoc. And when it has the blue words, that means there is a link on there. So you got to click on it and open up all of those links. It's specifically laid out for you the directions on what you have to do. So you need to make sure you're clicking on those links and following the directions. And also, I'm seeing a few of you are writing your whole essays. However, we are trying to do it piece by piece just so we can focus on everything day by day, so you don't have to worry about doing everything all at once. So we are going to be doing it day by day. So the first day, which was yesterday, you should have just written your introduction, okay? So you gotta go back, and we also left some comments on there for you to make some edits. So you should, after this video, you're going to look at those comments that were left, and you're going to go back to your same document that you have already written on, and you are going to make those revisions and fix your introduction. Okay? Now, another thing is that Friday is May 1st, and if you've been following with the story, you would all know that May 1st is Wishing Day, May Day. So we are all going to be writing our own wishes on Friday, which is going to be very exciting. So I'm just letting you know now to give you a warning and a little heads up that we'll be doing this on Friday. So if you want to start thinking now about your wish, what you would wish for, it could be anything. So start thinking of that now, because we're going to be sharing our wishes with everyone on Friday, on May Day. So it's going to be very exciting. Alrighty, it's now time to move on with our read aloud. Today is actually our last read aloud, which is kind of bittersweet, but we are finally going to be able to hear what happens to Red. We are finally finishing the book, so I know you all have been waiting for this moment. I'm very excited, and I hope you all are too, to see what happens to Red. We are finally going to see what happens to her, if she's going to be cut down or not. We've all been waiting for this moment, so let's wrap up this book. Chapter 49. Dave had a megaphone, and through it he reminded the crowd to stay behind the barriers that had been erected. "This is a big tree, folks," he said, "and when it goes, we don't want anyone else going with it." "Bongo," I said in a voice that only she could hear. "You need to get to a safe place." "You heard him. I'm a big tree. You don't want to be in the way when I fall." "I'm not going anywhere," she replied in a stubborn whisper. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. But I'm staying with you, Red, and that's final." Dave turned to his workers. "Okay, let's get this show on the road." "Please, Bongo," I said, softly but urgently. The saw moved closer. I waited, expecting to hear the painful roar of the chainsaw engine. Instead, a small but intense sound filled the air, something like a puppy growl mixed with a kitten hiss. It was a baby possum. Darting through the huge crowd, across the muddy lawn, past Dave and his crew, around the massive saw, beneath the stump grinder, and finally, triumphantly, up my trunk, was none other than Flashlight. He climbed straight to his former hollow and settled there, his tiny head poking out. He was panting and trembling and hiccuping, but he did not seem to be in any danger whatsoever of fainting. "I missed you, Red," he said it in a voice so small that only Bongo and I could hear. "Hold off the saw!" Dave yelled. "Some dang animal just ran up the trunk." Bongo popped out of her hollow. "Flash!" she hissed. "You can't be here. It's dangerous. They're about to, you know." "You're here," Flash pointed out. Across the grass streaked Harry Spiders with her other babies trailing. She went straight to the possum's hollow, where she proceeded to scold Flash, and she snuggled him close. In the sky, little Harold suddenly appeared, frantically flapping his wings like a fuzzy butterfly. Agnes and the rest of her brood followed. They settled into their home as if they'd never left. Bongo moved the home plate to make room for the owls. The ewes came next, trotting across the lawn. Last to join the group was the skunk family, who quickly scrambled up my trunk. 7 possums, 4 raccoons, 5 owls, and 6 skunks had waddled, scooted, dashed, and fluttered from their various homes just to see me off. My residents. My friends. The crowd was delighted. People applauded. They cheered. They laughed. Francesca, straining to get a look, accidentally let go of the kitten's leashes, allowing Lewis and Clark to escape. They ran straight to me, clambering up my trunk to join the gang. It wasn't all perfection. The babies and parents were grumbling, but softly enough that none of the humans could hear. "Ouch!" muttered Hot Buttered Popcorn. "Your tail's in my mouth," cried one of the ewes. "You smell like a skunk," someone exclaimed. "I am a skunk," came the reply. "Mom," asked Harold, "should I be afraid of a cat?" "As a rule, yes," said Agnes, "but this is a special circumstance." It took some effort, but eventually the entire group settled in together above the highest wishes. They gazed down calmly at the fascinated crowd below. One of the tree cutters took off his helmet and scratched his head. This just don't happen," he said to Dave. "Those animals ought to be eating each other." "It's some kind of crazy critter miracle," said another worker. He pulled out his smartphone. "This is going on Facebook." Lots of other people seemed to have the same idea. Cameras clicked away. Ignoring the barricades, the reporters dashed over, microphones extended, as if they were hoping to interview the animals. Bongo, always a bit of a ham, was happy to comply. "Chip, please," she said to the microphone, waving beneath her. Dave gestured helplessly at Francesca. "What is up with this menagerie, lady? How are we supposed to cut this tree down?" Menagerie is basically just a collection of animals kept in captivity for some type of exhibition or something like maybe a zoo. So he's saying all of the animals up in the tree on red are a menagerie, a collection of animals. Francesca, wiping away tears, stood. She put her arms around Stephen and Samar. Slowly, they made their way across the muddy grass. When she reached me, she pulled a bookmark from Maeve's journal before handing the book to Stephen. It was a strip of cloth made of blue-striped fabric, frayed and faded. Maeve's wish. Carefully, Francesca tied it to my lowest branch, already crowded with wishes. She stared, long and hard, at the animals. Lewis and Clark purred happily. The crowd quieted. The only sound was the rustling of my leaves. Finally, Francesca spoke. "Look, I don't do speeches. That's not my way." She patted my trunk. "But here's the thing. Until today, I'd almost forgotten how important this old tree is to my family story. And from the look of it," she pointed to my residence, "it's important to a few other families as well." Many people smiled. A few laughed. "I hate this word," Francesca continued, running her hand over my carved bark. She's talking about the word leave that was carved into red. She hates that word leave. "Hate it. My great-great-grandmother Maeve would have hated it just as much. Here in this neighborhood, we're better than this." She looked over at Smar's parents. "We don't threaten people here. We welcome them." Francesca reached for Samar's hand. "This tree is staying put, and I hope your family will too." This has to be probably one of my favorite chapters in the book, just because it's so sweet to see how all the animals come together to stick up for Red. Now, not all these animals all get along, and they're coming together for Red to be there for her last day. So this is such a sweet and heartfelt moment throughout this book, and I think this is probably one of my favorite chapters. And it even shows the picture in this book of all the animals, and I think it's so cute, and they're all like sticking up for their friend, and I just love it. And not only this, but Francesca also comes to the realization that she shouldn't cut down Red. She finally gets to read the journal of her great-great-grandmother Maeve, which actually has her wish still in it, which is pretty amazing that it's been there for probably almost 200 years. And then if we remember, Maeve's wish was for someone to love. And that is actually the wish that Francesca puts back on Red. So by doing this, she's making such a big statement. Now, this is kind of symbolizing, almost in a sense, friendship and kindness and being accepting of one another. And Francesca makes a speech at the end of this chapter about how they don't threaten people. She says, we welcome them. So this was a very big statement, and Francesca finally came to this realization, which I'm so happy that she did. And Francesca is finally realizing the significance of Red and its importance to the community. Red means a lot to the community. They all seem to come to Red because they have hopes and dreams and aspirations. Everyone does. And just like Maeve. And I think from Francesca reading Maeve's experience opened her eyes, definitely opened her eyes a lot to the situation that's going on with Samar, because Maeve almost experienced the same thing. So this was very eye-opening for her. And the last thing that Francesca says in this chapter is, this tree is staying put, and I hope your family will too, talking about Samar and her family. So Francesca is finally putting her foot down to support Red and Samar and her family. For Red, she provides such hope to the community and to the people who live in the town. And Francesca is also sticking up for Samar because she's finally come to the realization that we need to stop with this hate. We need to start accepting people, and that's what communities do. We treat each other with kindness. So here we are starting to see the community finally come together to support one another, which is such a powerful message. Chapter 50. That night, many hours after the crowd had scattered, Samar slipped out the front door of the little blue house. Stephen, who'd been watching from his bedroom window, joined her moments later. They sat silent, beneath my wish-laden boughs. Laden means to be weighed down by something, so there are so many wishes on Red that it's putting a lot of weight on her branches. The slightest breath of wind sent the index cards fluttering like huge moths. Moonlight was everywhere, it seemed, on the wishes, on my branches, on the downy-headed owlets, in the upturned gazes of Stephen and Samar. How beautiful we all were, bathed by the soft and silver light. Do you think your family will stay here? Stephen asked. After everything that's happened? I don't know, said Samar. I hope so. The breeze kicked up. Cards chattered. Ribbons danced. A scrap of notebook paper, loosely tied with red yarn to my lowest branch, broke free. Samar snatched it as it swooped past. She squinted at the scribbled writing. Then she stood, carefully tying the paper back onto my branch. What was the wish for? Stephen asked. An invisible robot that does homework. Seems unlikely. True. Samar leaned against my trunk and smiled. But then, so does a talking tree. Chapter 51. If this were a fairy tale, I'd tell you there was something magical about that wishing day, that the world changed and we all lived happily ever after. But this is real life. And real life, like a good garden, is messy. Some things have changed, some things haven't. Still, optimist that I am, I'm feeling hopeful about the future. Samar's parents decided not to move, at least not for a while. Stephen and Samar had become good friends. Sometimes they do their homework at the base of my trunk. Their parents still don't talk to one another. I'm not sure they ever will. The police never found the boy who carved "leave" into my trunk. But a couple of weeks ago, I saw him sauntering by. I pointed him out to Bongo. Let's just say she made a very large deposit that day. All my residents are back where they belong, safe in their hollows. They still argue sometimes, but they haven't yet eaten one another. Francesca applied to the city to make a heritage tree. That means I'm protected forever. She's also on a first-name basis with a local plumber who's learning to deal with my pushy roots. Lewis and Clark still haven't figured out how to walk on leashes. Bongo's made a new friend. His name is Harley Davidson. I suspect we may have some crow newbies in our future. As for me, I promised Bongo I will never be a Batinsky again. I told her that my meddling days are over. And yet, here we are, you and I. What can I say? I'm more talkative than most trees. Still, if you find yourself standing near a particularly friendly-looking tree on a particularly lucky-feeling day, it can't hurt to listen up. Trees can't tell jokes, but we can certainly tell stories. Alrighty, so we're finally done with our read aloud on Wishtree. That was the end of the book. I'm so happy that there was a happy ending. I love how Stephen and Samar end up becoming friends. Now, this book sends such a powerful message, again, on acceptance and treating everyone with kindness. Now, with Samar and her family, everyone in the community kind of was against them at first, and that's why someone carved the word leave into red. So we go from that to being loving and accepting of them, and they eventually end up staying in the town for a while. And we also notice that this happens with Red as well. Red has her own community within her tree. There's Bongo, there's the possums, and all the other animals. So, and you see how at the end of the book, they all come together to support Red. It's one big community. So we got Red's community, and we have the town and that community as a whole. So everyone at the end of the book finally comes together to support one another, and it's just filled with so much love and happiness, and it's just such a strong and powerful message that we get to read throughout this book. Alrighty guys, so that's the end of our read aloud. I hope you all enjoyed the book just as much as I did. I actually think I might even want to read it again. I just love this book actually, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Now that we're done with our read aloud, you guys are going to be working on your hyperdocs, so if you need to make revisions to your introduction, you should be doing that first. Then you are going to move on to your similarities paragraph, and you're going to follow everything that's on the hyperdoc. You're going to open up all the links, and you're going to follow all the directions and look at all the samples. Alright, so good luck with that. Goodbye.